Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to all of you from wherever you're joining from. I am Kemal E. Ford and welcome to the 2026 Masters of Science in Sport Business Management Sports Seminar. This year's event is being held under the theme From Schoolboy Football to the Professional Game. As organizers of this event, we are grateful for you all being here in attendance as we will discuss the sport that we love, football, across various facets. When it comes on to sporting development in Jamaica, the country has prioritized harnessing talent as the early childhood level with various sporting events. Football being one of the main sports that has Jamaicans tuning into matches at the high school level, domestic level, and international levels. For this event, the program will cover three segments. These would include education, grassroots football, and the professional game. The program for this event is in the YouTube description for those who want to access. Without further ado, I do hand over the floor to Mr. Josiah Barkley for the opening prayer.
Greetings all. Let us pray. Most kind and loving Father, as we come to you this day, we thank you for your grace and mercy. We give you praise because you're worthy to be praised. We thank you and we thank your holy name, God. I pray, God, that right now, God, you will just open our hearts, open our minds, and open our souls, God. I pray that you will forgive us for all our trespasses, God. I pray that you will forgive us for every sin that we have committed, God. I pray, God, right now that the speakers, that they will be here and that they will be here and that they will be in you, God. I pray, God, that whatever word they put out on this platform, God, that it will be a blessing, God. I pray, God, for the minds of these students, these student athletes, God, that they will be blessed, God. That that is said here, that they will learn, God, and it will be a blessing, God. I pray for the host, God. I pray for our facilitators, God. I pray that you will give them the strength and courage to carry on, God. I pray, God, that this forum will be a success, God. And I pray, God, for your love right now, God. I pray for safety and guidance right now, God. I pray that you will provide for us, God. I thank you for the sponsors of this event, God. I thank you that you give them life and you allow them to be able to give back to us, God. I thank you right now, God, and I give you praise. In your holy and precious name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much, Josiah. We do hope that everyone is feeling blessed after that prayer. Now we will hand over to Mr. Fabian Stewart, lecturer, for his opening remarks.
In your holy and precious name I pray. Amen.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome. On behalf of the Mona Academy of Sports and the Faculty of Sports, here at the University of the West Indies Mona campus, it is my absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Sports Seminar 2026. And a special welcome to everyone joining us across the region and the diaspora and on the UWI Mona media. Tonight's seminar was conceived, designed, and produced entirely by our students. And as their lecturer, I could not be more proud. What you are about to experience is not just an academic exercise. It is sport development in action. And they have chosen a theme that matters deeply, especially with the passing of the World Cup, from schoolboy football to the professional game. I'd much rather from school, from student athletes that play football, but so it is. Every September, tens and thousands of Jamaicans pack stadiums, tune into the Manning Cup and the Costa Cup football. We celebrate our schoolboy footballers like national heroes. But here is the uncomfortable question. What happens after the final whistle of that last season? For every young man who makes it in the professional, or to a professional contract, there are far too many of our talented players that fall or fail through the gaps between the schoolboy football game and the professional one. That gap and how we close it is tonight's conversation, as well as the other opportunities that we need to consider. And our students have assembled what I consider an excellent and exactly the right people to have this type of conversation. You know, I'm honored to share this platform with Dr. Keith Wellington, Mr. Keith Wellington, President of ISSA, somebody I know well, somebody I do know that is deeply interested in student athletes and their success. And he's the man at the helm of Schoolboy sports itself. By Coach Devon Ferguson, the head coach of the Jamaica College, who shapes these young athletes on the ground every single day. And by two leaders who have built the pathway where none existed. That is Mr. Adrian Virtue, CEO of Ballaz Academy International, and Mr. Andrew Edwards, CEO of Genesis Academy. And especially, and a special sort of invite to Dr. Ramon Hunter, Doctor of Physical Therapy, who will speak to the body that must survive this type of journey. Because talent means nothing without health. We also have Miss Tanya Lee Perkins, head of sponsorship at the Jamaica Football Federation, who really understands the business engine that makes professional dreams possible. So governance, coaching, player development, sports medicine, and the business of football, every link in the chain is on this panel tonight. So to our viewers, bring your questions, drop them in the chat, and be a part of this conversation. To our panelists, thank you for giving up your evening to our young people and the future of the Jamaican football. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Sports Seminar 2026, and let the conversation begin. Thank you. To our panelists, thank you for giving up your evening to our young people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stewart. Really appreciate you bringing greetings. So, as you know, our program is listed in the YouTube description. However, we have decided to make such a slight change. We will be starting with Dr. Ramon Hunter instead, and we'll move going forward from there. So, before you decide to speak, before you get to the floor, we have a quick introduction. So, active, precise, and passionate are a few of the words that can be used to describe our first panelist for this evening. Dr. Ramon Hunter has had experience as chair of the Jamaica Medical Committee for the Powerlifting National Association of Jamaica. Additionally, Dr. Hunter has also provided medical coverage of powerlifting tournaments in the months of March, May, and June in 2023. For the purpose of these proceedings, he will speak on injury management. However, before he will be welcoming, just letting you know that he's a former student of Jamaica College, a school that has beaten my alma mater, St. Andrew Technical High School, multiple times towards that Manning Cup trophy. Welcome, Dr. Hunter.
All right, thank you. Let me go ahead and start the screen sharing here for a moment. Just give me a minute. I think it's this one. I hope everybody can see this. Give me a minute. Start again. All right. All right, so thank you. I'm Dr. Ramon Hunter, and I like what was said from before. Let's close in on that gap. there is a gap regarding the transition of high school student athletes into university and competing at university level, collegiate level regarding their sports and discipline. Now
Sorry,
it's a
Dr.
pleasure.
Hunter.
Yes.
We're seeing your notes. Can you do the presenter mode, please?
Right, sorry about that. Let me see. Okay, hold on. Okay. All right.
Start slideshow.
Mhm.
Good.
How's that? That's fine.
Yes, that's good. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for that assistance. Right, so it's a pleasure to be here as we explore how student athletes can build winning careers both on the field and in the classroom. Before I go any further, this is a very broad topic. And it's very meaty. There's a lot into it. But I'm just going to give just pretty much general idea since, within this 10-minute period that we'll have here. The transition from high school sport, whether Manning Cup champs or other schoolboy and schoolgirl competitions into university athletics is one of the most exciting phases in an athlete's development, but it's also one of the most vulnerable. You usually hear about athletes getting injured within a short period of time. Now, today I want to talk about the injuries that commonly affect athletes during this transition, why they happen, and what we can do clinically, strategically, and educationally to prevent and manage them effectively. All right, so this is, from my perspective, this is a component of closing in on that gap. So what we're going to be following is outline, why the transition phase is at high risk, common injuries in university transition in athletes, why these injuries occur, injury prevention strategies, effective management practices, and then we'll have the closing. So the question is, why the transition phase is high risk? There are different factors involved, and I'm going to go through them right now. Moving into university sport means stepping into a completely different environment. It's totally different. The training loads increase. We're talking about these student athletes, or the training load increases. The competition becomes more intense. Strength and conditioning expectations rise sharply. Is totally different in terms of the strength and conditioning from high school is different at university level. At the same time, these very same athletes, because they're not just athletes, but they're student athletes as well. So they're studying, going through assignments and projects while training and going to competitions. These student athletes have to juggle new academic pressure, inconsistent sleep, changes in nutrition, and often less structured supervision than they had in high school. Now, all these different factors that I had just mentioned a while ago combined, it creates a major issue. It creates like a perfect storm where the risk of injury increases significantly, especially in the first 6 to 12 months of university participation. I can attest to that. We're entering into a new academic period. And what usually happens, I have these new students coming in on campus from high school, and some of them have their, these different athletes, their different sporting disciplines, and they come in. And within this first period, within the 6 to 12-month period, which is true, coming with injuries, of various kinds. And, this is some of the different things that we'll have to definitely address. Now, the common injuries that we usually face when these athletes come in are primarily lower body, which is one of the main things. So lower body injuries take the brunt of the increased load. We're talking about like hamstring strains, different grades, especially in footballers and sprinters who suddenly increase sprint volume. Patellofemoral pain, or you have pain at the front of the knee, anterior knee pain, they call it, often linked to rapid increases in running, jumping, and gym work. So it's not just in the sport, but also it occurs in the gym. So they go through these different exercises and workout regimes that are very high intensity that their body wasn't previously conditioned for. And so they end up with these injuries as well. So it's not just competing in the sport that led them to the injury, but even during the whole training process in the gym. They have ankle sprains, particularly in football, basketball, netball, stress fractures, especially in endurance athletes with poor energy availability or sudden load spikes. And then, so that's for the lower limb. These are typical injuries in the lower limb. There are more, but these are, it's not a exhaustive list, but these are the more common ones that we find. And you have now the pelvic and hip injuries. This region becomes a hotspot during the transition. Common issues include hip flexor strains from increased sprinting and kicking demands, adductor strains, or commonly known as groin injury, often due to inadequate strength ratios and poor change of direction mechanics. Sacroiliac joint dysfunction, or rather in your lower back, sometimes located where your tailbone is, in that area, usually triggered by heavier lifting loads or poor technique. I've had persons who come into the clinic and they get this injury, this one in particular, sacroiliac joint dysfunction, when they're doing like heavy back squats. They do heavy squats in the gym because they need to get the legs stronger, so they do a lot of heavy squatting, a lot of different squatting. And this is one of the main issues that lead to sacroiliac joint dysfunction if it is not done properly. Let's go to the shoulder. So moving from bottom up, from the lower limb to the hip and pelvis, up to the shoulders now. For swimmers, throwers, volleyball players, athletes, new to structured weight training, these are different types of persons who have like shoulder injuries. And some of these shoulder injuries include rotator cuff tears, which is one of the most common ones. Rotator cuff tears, tendonitis, inflammation in the shoulder, labral tears, which is pretty much the band that surrounds the joint capsule that deepens the capsule of the shoulder joint. That acromioclavicular joint sprains, especially found in those persons who do a lot of contact type sports. Usually find that this type of injury, acromioclavicular joint sprains, in that population. Now, there are other injuries that occur that can go unnoticed, especially if you're using like an MRI or some of these diagnostic imaging tools. It may not show up some of these other injuries like Achilles and patellar tendinopathy. Lower back pain is a symptom. There are different things that can cause lower back pain, but persons will often report lower back pain. You usually find a lot of people talking about lower back pain. It's one of the main things that's going around right now, lower back pain, especially for like the youth, these junior athletes having lower back pain. A lot of these injuries usually find them in more, back in the day, usually find them in more elite athletes, but now they are found in juniors because they are being pushed so hard so soon, and the body's not ready for that. Delayed recovery due to poor sleep, nutrition, or academic stress. Now, these injuries are often preventable, but only if we understand the underlying causes. So the question is, why these injuries occur? Why do these injuries occur? Most injuries in this transition phase come down to a few key factors. Some of these are load mismanagement. What I mean by this is load mismanagement is doing too much too soon, doing too much too often, doing too much too fast for what your body, your tendon, your muscles are currently ready for. It's the number one reason why athletes get overuse injuries, because it's a load mismanagement. And this is what often happens. You pick an athlete, a junior athlete who appears good in champs, in these different high school competitions that look good. You go there, you're recruiting these young athletes that look good on that field, in that context. But putting them now in a high school, in a university type level, giving them a different type of training regime very soon, because you believe that they can take the load because of how they had competed and how they had performed on the track when you saw them for recruitment, you know, take them into university level and you're giving them a higher demand in terms of load and force and different types of exercises, and the body can't do it. And that's load mismanagement. And this is the #1 cause of overuse injuries. Strength deficits. Many high school athletes simply don't have the foundational strength required for collegiate sport. Poor movement mechanics, sprinting, jumping, and lifting technique often need refinement. Poor movement mechanics pretty much means putting the load in the wrong place. So the force goes to the wrong tissues. So that will require some screening to know in terms of the body mechanics. And these persons, because they don't assist them for the body mechanics, they end up, you know, poor movement mechanics and having the forces going through different tissues and causing problems. Inadequate recovery habits as well. So because of the studying part of it, the school part of it, you have sleep deprivation, inconsistent nutrition, psychosocial stress, or reduced tissue resilience. Limited medical support. Some university programs lack consistent physiotherapy or athletic training coverage. So even here at this university, we have physiotherapy clinics. We have different physiotherapy clinics, but not many people, not many athletes out there at this university make use of that. And you don't have to wait for an injury to occur. You can, like what this says, injury prevention. We do injury prevention, structural strength and conditioning. You want to progressively load gradually. You want to gradually progress in terms of the loading, ideally no more than 10 to 20% per week. And that speaks to the load mismanagement issue. You want to balance lower limb strength, especially hamstring to quadriceps and adductor to abductor ratios. And that speaks to the strength deficits. And the technique coaching for sprinting, jumping, and lifting, that speaks to the poor movement mechanics. So that is how you address these different issues, right? Another thing we want to do is pre-screening or pre-season screening, which is essential. You do musculoskeletal assessments, checks your muscles, your joints, your tendons, how do you move, your performance, before you get injured or before you start a new training program. Functional movement evaluations, watching to see how you actually move during real life patterns and not just how strong you are in isolation, but it really finds the hidden problems. It shows your strength, mobility, and control, how these work together. And it predicts your risk of injury, all right? So functional movement evaluations, these are different tools that we can use to prevent injuries from occurring. Video analysis for sprint mechanics and change of direction patterns. These tools help us identify risk factors before they even become injuries. Injury prevention, another strategy is recovery. Recovery, recovery is often a missing piece of university athletes that don't recover. They just keep going, and you have overuse injuries. We must emphasize sleep hygiene, 7 to 9 hours consistently. Proper nutrition and energy availability. Eating properly is really good, really important. Schedule recovery sessions, mobility work, soft tissue work, cold water immersion, massage. All these different things are very important for injury prevention. We spoke about education earlier. So education is also another method of injury prevention and athlete self-management. Athletes must understand their bodies. We need to teach them how to interpret soreness versus injury. Now, soreness is like, just to help you out a bit, when we talk about soreness, it's a dull, achy, stiff feeling, like on a scale of intensity in terms of pain, less than 3, less than or equal to 3 out of 10 in terms of pain intensity. And it improves when you warm up and it's gone by tomorrow, right? In that context, you can keep training, maybe a lighter intensity, but you can keep training. As it relates to injury, how you can tell the difference with an injury is usually sharp, it's acute, it's pinching, it's greater than a 3 out of 10. It's not a niggle, it's something bad. It's worse the next day. You have swelling, you have limping, you have loss of motion. It gets worse when you warm up and it's worse when you wake up tomorrow. In a context like that, you back off, you stop, and you assess the situation, all right? So athletes need to know how to interpret those sensations and feelings, and how to communicate early warning signs. Talk to your coach, your manager, talk to, come into the physiotherapy clinic, talk to the doctor. And they also need to learn how to manage hydration, warm-ups, and cool-downs. Education is one of the most important and most powerful injury prevention tools we have, right, at our disposal. Early reporting is also important. The earlier an injury is reported, the shorter the downtime. University athletes must be encouraged to speak up early, not push through the pain. It's not a no pain, no gain kind of a thing. You remember what I had said about pain? Bear that in mind. Management must be structured and progressive, gradual loading rather than the rest only. Don't just rest, but you gradually load because the muscles, the joints, the ligaments, they need time and they adapt slowly. So if you do it too fast, they won't have time to adapt, and that's why you have injuries. Sport-specific return to play criteria, and an example of that is if the person is injured and they want to return to sport, they must be able to go through their daily activities pain-free, no pain. They must also have good basic strength movements. They must demonstrate strength. They must have good sport drills, and they must take them through a sport simulation, and they must be able to perform that sport simulation with confidence, with no pain, and with proper performance. When all those boxes are checked, then they can return back to sport. Academic integration. Injured athletes often struggle academically due to pain. This is the last slide, just wrapping up here. And fatigue or missed classes, right? Effective management of this includes adjusted training schedules. Sometimes we tend to live in a box in isolation. The coach is over there, the lecturer is over there, and the student is in the middle having to try and see how to best fit both worlds together. The coach say you need to come early in the morning and you need to come in the evening after school or even during the class time. And the student is trying in their minds to figure out how to make this thing work because they want to continue playing the sport, but they also want to learn and get an education. And this is where the difficulty is. So they need to be able to adjust the training schedules, adjust it. Academic advising. You have many academic advisors here on the university campus. Seek an academic advisor in the context of your sport and try to see how best you can work around this. Mental health support. I see you now sending out these emails about mental health support, mental health. Pay attention to that. If there's an issue regarding the mental health, address it. Don't wait until it gets worse. A lot of people are going around depressed. They started off as athletes, but because they don't know how to juggle both things and blend both worlds, then they end up with depression, and it's a bad fall, right? This is how we can help athletes succeed on both scoreboards, on the field, and in the classroom. In closing, the transition from high school sport to university competition is one of the most critical phases in an athlete's journey. If we understand the common injuries, like what was said, implement the strong prevention strategies, and apply effective management practices, we can help our student athletes build sustainable, high-performance careers. Because sometimes all it takes is one injury that messes up a person's career. But you can reduce the risk of that injury occurring by these strategies. Not just for one season, but for the long haul, on the field, in the classroom, and into the professional world. Thank you. And these are the references. You're interested in references.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hunter. Very informative presentation. So there are a few questions in the chat that Josiah will bring up just for Dr. Hunter before we move on to our next presenter.
Okay, sure. So I'm staying on.
All right. So one of the main questions that's being presented to Dr. Hunter now is that is there shareable data that helps show trends tied towards sport age and some of the attributes outlined?
Okay, I didn't get the question clearly. Go ahead and repeat again.
So is there shareable data that helps show trends tied to sports age and some of the attributes outlined?
Yes, there are some articles out there, some research that has shown, it's in the references here that I had posted up. Hold on. Yep. So you can check some of these references and get some information.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Wellington, are you available now?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So our next presenter now is Mr. Keith Wellington. Is Mr. Keith Wellington, a very prominent man within the sport industry. A lot of us are used to him, especially when it comes on to high school events, primarily champs. And I'd say this man is an ambassador for St. Elizabeth Technical High School State, which is the sister school of my alma mater, Stats. So continuing now, this speaker is a man who is very passionate about education and the development of students. Over the years, Mr. Keith Wellington has risen to prominence by becoming the 2016 LASCO Principal of the Year, for the St. Elizabeth Technical High School. He joined the St. Elizabeth Technical High School academic staff in 1997 and has been soaring ever since that time. Since 2019, Mr. Keith Wellington has served as the president for the Intersecondary School Sports Association, ISSA president, and has contributed to the development of high school sport by harnessing talent for the future. At present, Mr. Wellington continues to ensure that high school sport remains fair with various investigations on a yearly basis. For the purpose of this evening's proceedings, you speak on ISSA Schoolboy football research data. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Mr. Keith Wellington.
Thank you very much, Kamal. Good evening, everyone. And let me first of all thank the faculty and the students of the MSc course in sports business management for inviting me and giving me the opportunity to share. I note that I was asked to speak for maybe about 7 minutes and that my presentation, including questions, should last roughly 10 minutes. I intend to keep within those guidelines. And so a lot of what I have to say today will mostly be around maybe almost sound bites that can engender discussions around the topic and therefore solicit type of answers that you're looking for in not just enlightening yourself in terms of your course of study, but also provide you with an opportunity to contribute to the development of sports. And for me, obviously, my interest would be school sports. I know that we are discussing the pathway from schoolboy football to professionalism. And for that purpose, I would assume that we're going to schoolboy football would be focused on high school sports. And so let me start by saying that for us within our high school system, a youngster is enrolled in high school at somewhere between age 11 to 13, more than 90%. There may be one or two fall outside that band. But our youngsters are usually enrolled in high school sports between age 11 to 13. And many of them are engaged in schoolboy sports and football, as we are discussing from that age. And so my few minutes will be spent discussing and describing that pathway between starting at that age and for the 5, 6, or 7 years that our students are involved in activities within the high school system. Just to know that if we start with schoolboy football at that age and we take the norm, which is that kids are going to spend 5 to 7 years in high school, it means that they leave our system around about age 17, 18, or 19. I want to also make the point that we cannot truly say that professional football is played in Jamaica. And so that is something that is worth noting when we discuss
the pathway available to our student athletes, and in particular footballers. And I say that professional football is not really played in Jamaica. One, based on the enumeration available there, I don't know if there are a dozen persons who play in our top league who can survive economically from what is earned from the league. So in that regard, I would say that we don't play professional football in Jamaica. Right? We have a league that is aspiring to be a professional league, but if you are involved in something that you cannot survive from economically, then you would not necessarily want to regard it as a profession. And so it is within that context that I speak to the pathway available to our student athletes want to transition into professional football. I'd also like to say that the norm is that people believe that in order for you to be good at anything at all, there are a certain number of hours that you must be involved in that activity to become really good at it. And sport is no exception. That is why there are our kids who play football or any other sport is involved in hours and hours upon training, right? So a kid who plays football in our high school system and starts at age 11, aspiring to become a professional and wants to take a particular pathway, what are the pathways that are available to that to him or her? Because although we're saying schoolboy football, we actually have a system that facilitates girls matriculating into the professional system. And for us at ISSA, we believe that the best chance that a student has of becoming a professional footballer is actually through his or her education, because we believe that the easiest professional league to get into is the one closest to us, which is the USA system, right? Most of our footballers aspire to play in Europe, right? But it is, in many instances, far-fetched because of in terms of their preparation from schoolboy football. Most of our best footballers don't want to leave school, or the coaches and the families don't necessarily encourage them to leave school before age 18 and 19. By that time, you're an old man in terms of European football, right? On the other hand, in the US system, which focuses a lot on drafting people from the college system, not just for football, but for other sports, if you do well academically, and you are awarded a scholarship to study in the US, your chances of playing some level of professional football increases exponentially. The issue that we have within our school system is that our best players are usually not our most accomplished academians, right? And obviously, this is not painting everybody with one brush. But the truth is, again, if you look at our system, culturally, Jamaicans believe that you must take up your book. And when you take up your book, there are not many families and many persons who encourage persons to couple that with other activities. So you're either a book student, as they would put it, or you are a footballer or an athlete. And for us at ISSA, what we try to do is to encourage students to merge both activities. And that is why we have been insistent that there must be some minimum academic criteria for you to play in our competitions, because you remain a student, or you must remain a student while you are playing. What we have found is that we have, I think right now there are more than 700 students in colleges in the US on scholarships. The greater majority of them are from track and field, right? But there are many who get scholarships through football. I think this year alone, we have more than 60 students so far who have been offered soccer scholarships or football scholarships. For example, at States, we would have lost 9 players through graduation. 8 of them will be taking up scholarships in US colleges. So the opportunities are there for them along that pathway. And I know Andrew and André will speak more about professional and the football side of it. So I will stick with the academics and how it supports our student athletes becoming professionals. And we believe that, as I said before, that is the best and safest route for professional football, being trained with your academics, right? In terms of a local perspective, we are a little bit disappointed that our local colleges don't seem to offer that same level of support for our student footballers. We see, for example, UWI and the fact that they weren't able to sustain their presence in the Premier League, although they had a program that I thought was a very, very worthwhile one, and one that should have set an example for the other colleges abroad here. And because we don't see that type of support locally from our colleges, then it makes it even more difficult for our students to understand the value of twinning their education with the playing of sport, and therefore wanting to make that choice of being a footballer rather than a student footballer. Essentially, we believe that academics goes a far way in guiding you as a professional footballer. If we look at even in the bigger countries where professional football is important, education is something that is taken extremely seriously. So we see, for example, Liverpool teenager having to go to classes before coming to training, or the youngsters at Arsenal or Barcelona or wherever they are, because it is still important that you develop your intellect, not just for post-football careers, but also to support your footballing career, because your brain is just as important as your foot in football. And so for us at ISSA, we continue to insist that we are, while we have been thrown the responsibility of developing Jamaica's football, our intent and our purpose is really to do so by ensuring that the academic portion of their development is taken care of, and those who have an interest in becoming professional footballers, that to some extent we as principals and the organization that we run support that development by ensuring that while they focus on becoming professional footballers, they value the academic side of that development. And so I think my 7 minutes is basically up. I will leave myself open to questions for whatever time is left in my 10 minutes presentation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Wellington. Very informative, basically touched a lot here locally and internationally as it relates to just overall making football and overall transitioning become more serious, taken more seriously and more of a business rather than just something that, hey, you do well in high school, but yet still we don't necessarily hear of you within the years to come. There's a question here in the chat that asks, what is the relationship between the Jamaica Football Federation and the ISSA? If there's one.
All right, so first of all, in terms of our football, there's no, well, remember that ISSA is a multi-sport organization. We do not have a parenting body per se. The organization is run by the schools, but we have an extremely good relationship with our national associations, be it cricket, football, track and field, or what have you. What the JFF has done for ISSA and its competitions is to support us in terms of administrative guidance, in terms of supporting through referees, and obviously training of our coaches. So we do have a good working relationship with them. Where I think that we have not done well is the relationship or the recognition that the greater majority of our young footballers will pass through ISSA and are for the most part depend heavily on ISSA competitions for their development in terms of competitive football. I think most of our student footballers, their best games at youth level, especially under 16, are actually from the ISSA system. when they get old and they represent their clubs and they represent their clubs, they get the opportunity to play in various competitions run by the JFF. But I still think that for the most part, it is the ISSA competitions that provide them with the greatest opportunities for exposure. And if you look at it, for example, almost all our national coaches come out of the school system. There are very few coaches who coach at the Premier League level and don't coach at the high school level. So we have a relationship that I think can be strengthened, although it is a very good one.
Thank you very much for that response. One final question here. Before I go into this question, we have seen a lot of times when it comes on to schoolboy football, a plethora of talented athletes, when they gather these young men at the end of the year to have their all-star competition, we see where the talent is being pooled, and we see a lot of them really come and play some real good quality football with each other, even though they were opponents throughout the season, they become united. The question that has been asked now is that, are there classes to better aid the management of these athletes?
Are there classes to better manage?
Yes, are forums to actually better manage these youngsters coming out of high school?
Also, for those who are coming out or who are already out of high school, that's the question?
Yeah.
Or are you talking while they're in school?
While they're in school as well.
Okay. All right. So again, because when they play for their school, they are regarded as students. One of the basic or the core function of our schools, and obviously some schools do their jobs better than others, but one of the core functions of our school is career development. And so when we have student athletes who show a particular level of intelligence in the different sports and a particular level of interest, the onus is on the school to provide the support that will allow their development to go along a path that better guarantees success. As I said, there are some schools that teach maths better than others. There are some that does physics better than others. And there are some that support sporting students better than others. But yes, there is the need, and in some cases, some schools are fulfilling that need to manage their student athletes so that they are on a path that will give them some level of success. Just one other comment, not directly related to any question, but I know part of the discussion is about the level of attrition in terms of the number of kids who play the sport and those who go on to become professionals. I think that it is worth recognizing that there's no way you're going to find 2 or 3% of any cohort of student athletes becoming professionals in maybe anything at all, but certainly not in sport. As a matter of fact, the norm is that maybe less than 0.5% of those who are interested in the sport at age 18 or 19 will go on and earn anything from the sport. So it is not an indictment on any system at all that has 2,500 students playing in a competition and only 10 makes it to the next level. That is not an indictment. It is a natural progression. And you have to remember that when you're playing at schoolboy football at 18 and 19, you're competing for games with persons at 18 and 19 and even 15 and 16. As soon as you become 20, you're now competing with a 29-year-old professional.
All right. So trying just a stickler for time, but just seeing that there are two actually vital questions that would add value to this. One of the questions is that how would one measure parental involvement, and if we can do so, do we have visibility in other Caribbean countries at the moment? So in a sense, is parental visibility is there parental visibility in ISSA schoolboy football competitions?
It varies. It varies, and especially at the youth level, you see more of it. And again, if you understand school, when I have a PTA meeting for grade 7 parents, it's almost 100% turnout. When I have one for grade 11 or grade 10, it is probably 30% or 40%. So it is something that is of concern across the board. But what we do know is that the persons who are able to develop naturally and become successful, they usually have greater parental support, and where the parental support is not there, usually mentorship plays an even more significant role, because if the parent is not offering the support, some adult has to be there to offer that support. And usually it may be mentors, it may be the coach having a system around him that is very supportive of that kid. But it is difficult for a kid to transition without adult support.
All right, thank you. So one last question. So this question is coming, is from Ajay in the chat. Are there any disciplinary sanctions for schools that don't support student athletes through their academic years?
All right. Taking the question literally. So we don't sanction schools because of the weaknesses of their programs, right? So we could not go to a school and say, boy, you have a good footballer and you have allowed him to fall by the wayside, and therefore we're going to punish you. That is not part of our responsibility. But what we have done is to say to our schools that get your students who are playing sport to be interested in their academics and to perform at a very minimal level, right? And if you don't, then those kids are not going to be allowed to play. That is the extent of the sanctions that are applicable by the organization. But again, remember, it's an organization run by principals, and these schools, they have different cultures and different standards. There are some schools that believe that having gotten students who are extremely weak academically, sports is one of the only way that you can keep them interested in school, and therefore they have different criteria for them to be involved. There are other schools that believe that we are not a sporting school, and if you can't pass 7 subjects, no matter how good a footballer you are, you're not coming back to 6-1 to play. So again, the system has its individualism about it.
All right, so just want to say thank you once more to Mr. Wellington, a very busy man at this time, at all time of the year, trust me, one of the busiest persons. So getting him to be here for this forum was very good. And thank you very much. And we just want to say all the best to ISSA for the upcoming academic year. Years filled with sports and everything, various sporting events, schoolboy football being one of them to start off the calendar year. So thank you very much, Mr. Wellington. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, thank you very much. And I want to switch to my phone, so can you allow me in so that I can remain in?
Sure. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's keep the ball rolling. That was Mr. Keith Wellington, president of the Inter-Secondary School Sports Association and the principal of St. Elizabeth Technical High School. So, moving right along now, we will be speaking about football at the grassroots level. Grassroots level, something that I'm sure that all of us are eager to learn a lot more about, and just overall have a broader understanding. So we will have 2 speakers. The first speaker for this segment will be Mr. André Virtue, Director at Ballaz International Group. When it comes down to grassroots football in Jamaica, the name André Virtue should come to mind. In his development as a youngster, Mr. Virtue played football for Jamaica College as a midfielder. He later earned a scholarship to study at Howard University, where he pursued a degree in finance. For almost 25 years, Mr. Virtue has been contributing to the development of grassroots football as the director of Ballaz International. We would like to welcome Mr. André Virtue, who will contribute into the discussion regarding grassroots football within Jamaica.
Thank you, Kamal. Good night, everyone, and definitely a pleasure to be with you. Definitely kudos for the opportunity and for taking initiative to put something like this together. I look forward to the time. Definitely from even what was shared, definitely have committed myself to the whole space of development and grassroots. And I believe sharing with you tonight are just around the whole grassroots process. I moved back to Jamaica in 2002 with a commitment to give back, and the intention there was really to focus on grassroots. The grassroots, by definition, is non-elite, non-professional, full participation, not preventing anyone from getting involved. I think it's very, very important that that definition by itself is understood. I think Mr. Wellington also mentioned it in that even in Jamaica, we don't have professional football. So we look at our football structures that we do have, it's not professional. And most of that, if not all of that, falls under grassroots. And, there are different stages and phases of the grassroots conversation and discussion. I know your topic is from schoolboy football, and I would want to start from as the early ages, just talking around just the importance of how we start and how we prioritize the development of the game. I think one of the things that is very, very important in the grassroots space is having a understanding of your why. Why is it that you're doing what you're doing? From my own example or experience of being in the sport and getting so much from the sport without dream and a desire to play professionally as well. The reality of it is that less than 0.00% make it professionally. And we have to be very, very, very careful in what it is that we are doing at the right age and stage of the development of the sport, and what it is that the environments that we are creating. I think the moment we start talking about results and start talking around that space, development gets thrown through the window, because we're now very result oriented and we are unable to do what we want to do at the younger stages, because the priority about winning or the priority around, achieving these results take precedence over actually developing. And I think a huge part of my own experience and sharing with you as from a Ballaz Academy perspective and just really pouring into players is actually having a pathway and understanding that pathway and understanding that there are different steps and journey on that pathway that will take the players along that pathway. So for me, coming through your grassroots environment, you're looking at some things around the philosophy of the grassroots space. What is it? It's about fun, it's about enjoyment, it's about participation. And when you get into that space, you kind of have to appreciate that within the context of getting into high school football at 13, whatever has been done before that is going to be very, very important to the success that individual might have in the later years or stages of his or her life. And so it's very, very important that what is being done from a coaching education standpoint, or how the coaches engage and communicate with the players, very important on the role of the parent in that environment. So Wellington spoke about the difference of participation with parents in grade 7 and below, as opposed to the older grades involvement of the parents. But when you think about just the grassroots space and you think about the players and their participation, how are we engaged with them? Are we very transactional in how we engage the players? So for me, there's transaction or transformational in terms of your coaching and how it is they're approaching that grassroots space. It's also, as I shared before, it's actually a development of our result space. It's about the kids falling in love with the game and understanding how important the game is, that, these are the things that are going to be there. So for me, I believe that there are so many lessons that are going to be learned within this grassroots space. Persons who are coming into the sport, having access to the sport, participating in the sport for the reasons that they can achieve out of that sport. And I think within that, you have to touch on a few things, and I just want to just quickly, go through them. So one is success is measured differently for everybody. So, success in the grassroots environment is not about creating a Messi or a Ronaldo or a world star. That in the grassroots space, that's not the intention. In that space, is about the environment that you're creating for that individual to become all he or she can be. Understanding in that space the freedom to make mistakes and to fail should be encouraged and not be scoffed at, because that's where the learning happens. That's where that environment should be, should facilitate the growth and development of someone. Attempting to do something, failing at it is not necessarily saying that they are a failure, but their attempt they failed at. But how do we teach that as a lesson and a life lesson in the minds and the hearts of our players, that they understand that making a mistake is not the end of the world. They head down and they feel that teammates get on them and the shouting on the sideline. The grassroots space has to be understood in that it's about fun, it's about enjoyment, and it's about the environment of them learning. You think about the mistakes that they're going to make. Thousands and thousands of the international world stars that we are looking at every day failed and made mistakes at the grassroots space. And it is that environment of making the mistakes and failing that they would have learned and understood what it is that is going to be needed at the collegiate level or even at the professional level. All of these are also teachable moments, and I think this is where the conversation about the parents has to come in, and a lot more parent education has to be there, because then the conversation is not how many goals did you score and did you win the game, but did you do your best? What could you have done better? And so how are we creating that space, the grassroots space, that these are the types of environments that we are creating? And in creating these environments, you're ensuring that the players are getting what they need to get. On the technical side, or the more football side, we can't, yes, he might be a talented individual or she might be a talented individual, but there are certain things that need to be done in the age and stage of the development of the player. So if we can liken it to even the academic side, the player can't be doing calculus before learning algebra and trigonometry. It's a part of the journey. And there are certain stages of the player's development that is the right time to learn. So we talk about what happens between 7 and 12 years old as a very critical, important stage in the development of the sport. And if you don't pour into and provide the environment and the right coaching at that stage, when you get to 13, 14, and 15, if you don't have those basics there, it's going to be very difficult for you to transition into the other elements of the game. And so it's very important also to be mindful of, where the player is at and where are you taking the player and how it is that you are being very intentional. So are we age appropriate in our coaching, instruction and development? You can't teach what you're teaching a 13-year-old, what you're teaching a 7-year-old, even although he might have the football mind or he might be a little taller than. The reality of it is there is an age and a stage and a certain process of development that kid needs to go through socially, as well as physically, as well as technically, that is important for the player to have to go through an experience before going on to the different levels for him or her. And so I think it's important, just as I, share on grassroots is a very broad topic. There's so much information, so much to discuss, the facilities, the safety and the well-being of the environment that you're creating. We're talking about safeguarding the space and the environment, not just safeguarding the players, but safeguarding the coaches. So much is happening in the digital space. So much is happening in terms of how coaches relate to male and female. So these are a lot of things even in the grassroots space that we have to be very, very, very mindful. I know there are going to be many questions, and I think I'm going to use the time to answer those questions. But the one thing that I'd want to close my sharing on the grassroots is I believe that there is a lot that we can achieve if we recognize that there is an individual before us. More so than just actually winning, more so than trophies, medals, and the limelight. There's a player that is before you with issues, growing, and we have to be very mindful about the person that is before us. And so the environment that we create has to be an environment that we're thinking about this individual and how this individual can become the best that they can. Now, I'm speaking here in the grassroots space. If I was having a conversation about elite football, having a conversation about national team, having a conversation about professional, it's a different conversation, totally different approach. But at this approach, we're talking about the player, we're talking about the individual, the character of the player, the mindset of the player, and how we are going to help that player become the best that he or she can be. And so, as someone who has benefited to be a student athlete, and I believe that we have to be very, very clear that you can be a student athlete and that you can achieve all the results, all the things that you wanted as a footballer, and you can do it academically as well. I did it. And there are many people who have come through many of our programs who have gone on and are great student athletes. And it's a very good base, as Mr. Wellington mentioned, for you to further into the USL, to the MLS, and in the professional environment. Because even those environments, you want smart players, you want persons who are solution-oriented, you want persons who are leaders, and this grassroots environment helps us to create that. And so I'm sure there are questions that will come, but I'll pause what I'm sharing here now on the grassroots space and open up for any questions that may be wanted to be asked. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Virtue. Very much informative presentation. I really enjoyed it. One of the questions that I would want to ask as relates to football at the grassroots level, do you think enough is being done for succession planning? We understand that recently Jamaica would say that Jamaica got the easiest World Cup group recently, and it was unfortunate that after multiple attempts we were unable to qualify for the World Cup. You know, we have those players playing now, but again, thinking about the future, like for the next 10, 20 years, do you think enough is being done? Like even at the average community, do you think a lot of talent is being really scouted and succession planning is really taking place to ensure that, okay, Jamaica can be in position where one day we will be able to can say or the step of finger that Jamaica will qualify for the World Cup?
Yeah, I'm an optimist. I do believe that that day will come, but the reality of it is I don't believe a lot that enough is being done. The greatest investment we can do is to invest at the youth level, and I don't believe enough is being done in that and at that level to be able to allow the players to have the exposure, to have the experience, to be able to compete with our regional and international players so that we can become world class and go to the World Cup. So no, I don't believe enough is being done. I don't believe from a leadership perspective in how it is that we're looking at our youth football and how that youth football is going to feed our national programs and beyond our scouting, our recruiting, our player development and retention. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in those spaces, and that requires sacrifice. It requires a lot of resources to be able to do it, but it's more the will and recognition that without it, there will be no future.
Yeah, because for me, like based on observation, like, when you think about a lot of these countries, such as the Brazils, the Argentina, the Spain, a lot of those countries, it has become a thing where it is embedded in their culture to the point where it's a national crisis. If Spain doesn't have a good football team heading into the 2030 World Cup, it becomes
Hello?
It's not you, Virtue. I think we lost them.
Is everyone hearing me?
Yes, you're back now. Come on, you're
Yeah,
gone.
so as I was saying that, you know, in countries like the Brazils, the Germanys, the Argentinas, the Spain, a sport like football is very much culturally embedded in the sense that they themselves take it seriously to the point where if Spain doesn't have a good football team for 2030, it almost becomes a national crisis. So basically they have to learn it, live it, love it. Really, unlike Jamaica now, where support is given to football, yes, but at the same time, we're not necessarily culturally, it's not necessarily a DNA per se to ensure that okay, then we are ensuring that you investment is happening at the youth level and understand that not everyone from the youth level will actually matriculate. You will have some have some footballers or late bloomers who manage to join the squad and do well in the future. But there's a question here in the chat. All right, so how involved is the private sector with grassroots football?
Well, I don't think they are as involved as they could. The reality of it is not the private sector's responsibility to guide or direct it. They are there to support it. So I think they need some kind of blueprint or some kind of plan that they would then be invited to come and be a part of. So I think there are two parts there. There's one, what's the vision, what's the direction that you want to go relating to youth development? And then you incorporate or invite the private sector to come and be involved. They want to be involved in it, but again, you're not just giving away your resources without a plan, and it can't just be just out there. It has to be a part of something that someone can look at and see that it is going to materialize, and how it is that we communicate what these resources are going to do. So on the national level, I know we're going a little deeper with even the other presenters, but at the national level and the more elite level, that's a very, very clear pathway. It's qualifying for elite competitions and playing, representing the country. And so there's a very clear what that needs to be done. That's what the federation would have to spend their time trying to do. But before you get to there, the players that are going to feed that comes out of communities. Yeah, they play community football, club football, and that's kind of where the support is needed. We don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the facilities, and this is not a blame game or whatever. The reality of it is, in order for you to attract more and to do more, these things have to be, and that's probably where a partnership with the private sector can come in terms of ensuring that there are proper facilities or partnerships with to ensure that community football, club football, which is where a lot of those things that Mr. Wellington mentioned. Schoolboy football is not the place to develop the players. There's an academic institution that happens to play football, and it's important, but they can't be the ones that being relied on to develop football. Football has to be developed outside of the school system. And so those are just some points that I would raise in terms of the private sector's involvement and how they can be involved more.
All right, thank you very much. One final question before we move on. So this question is now from one of our group members, Carl Terrell, is asked that, what do you think the JFF needs to do to harness the talent that we have at the youth level in order for them to matriculate to the senior team?
That's a good question, and that question has a number of different parts to it. But I think there has to be a proper recruiting strategically, how it is that we're recruiting or identifying players, and then what is it that we're going to do with those players when they come, and how do we ensure that the players themselves are properly assessed, screened, and then how it is that we put them in a program that is going to help them to move along the different levels. So first, how are you going to identify the players? What are the type of players that you're looking for as a profile from a JFF perspective, whether that's starting with U14 or U15? I know we have a technical development, a TDS program going on now, but a lot of it has to do with where the players are being identified and what are you looking for. And after identifying what you're looking for, the important thing is they're being invited into a structured program that is clear and people know what that is going on. That provides a number of opportunities to be developing as an individual while developing as an athlete. And that has to be combined. So those things have to be prioritized, because when they're at the 13, they're teenagers, they're adolescents, there are other issues that are going on. And the football sometimes gets a backseat because those things are not prioritized. And that's why I mentioned in my very beginning, it's about the people and the person before me. So I think when you have that combination of things going, you have a lot more that you're able to access, that are able to then become a part of your youth national programs, who can then matriculate into the other stages of our national football. But I think the persons who are going to talk about elite football and more will speak a little bit more about that. I think the reference point for me from a grassroots standpoint, very, very important, very valuable in terms of a base. And if those things are focused and prioritized, then we'll have a lot more to come and support the national cause.
Thank you very much, Mr. Virtue. We really and truly enjoy the insights, all that you have presented, and continue in the good work. And we need more persons like you to continue doing what you're doing. So next presenter will now be Mr. Andrew Edwards. So, service is one of the main words that can be used to describe our next speaker. Mr. André Edwards has served as a former Jamaica under-17 and under-20 men's national football team coach, as well as a top-ranked coaching educator for the Jamaica Football Federation, and for regional football for the regional football governing body, Federation of North America, North Central and Caribbean Association of Football, CONCACAF. As a chairman of the Genesis Academy, Mr. André Edwards continues to contribute to the development of youth football in Jamaica. Today, we're pleased to speak to him about grassroots football. Welcome, Mr. André Edwards. Over to you, Mr. Edwards.
Good evening, Kemal. Good evening to one and all. Thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be a part of such an august group. I think the conversation is a very useful and timely one. So I'd like to congratulate you and your team, and also to thank the university through the Faculty of Sports for encouraging, facilitating, and allowing for this to take place. The theme that I see we are looking at is the transition from schoolboy football to professional football. And I have been asked to speak specifically on player development at the grassroots level. I'd take a few moments of my presentation to just make a few quick pointers before I get into the meat of the matter. Let me start by saying that I fully endorse what has been said by the two previous speakers, Mr. Keith Wellington and André Virtue, that schoolboy football is not by any stretch of the imagination equipped to facilitate the transition of football players from grassroots to professional ranks. It does the work now because we do not have better. And I think any reasonable person thinking about it would accept that there's a lot of missing parts to what schoolboy football is capable of offering at the moment. And so I would suggest that this is something for another conversation, outside of this particular one. When we think about development of players, I think one of the first things I'd like to mention here is that player development is not linear. It is what I like to call quasi-linear, which means that players will move forward, regress, move forward, regress, move forward, regress. And sometimes the regressions are deeper than the forward movement. Sometimes they are permanent, and so as André spoke earlier, talking about the individual, here at Genesis, one of the things that we have always maintained is that not every player that comes to us or every person that comes to us wanting to play football at Genesis will continue as a player. And so we have always sought to facilitate development holistically, so to speak. And we are very proud that we have had graduates from Genesis who are referees, physiotherapists. Our website at the moment, genesisfootballca.com, is maintained by a young man who just graduated from Monroe. He came to us with his brother to play football, recognized that that's not his forte. Unfortunately, because of his love for the game and his love for the technology, he's still with us, going 4 years now and doing an excellent job. We're still trying to point people into other areas of the sport where they may find a niche that suits their particular skill sets best. But let me just spend some time now to look at player development in a little more detail. When we think about player development, there are essentially 4 pillars of development when we looking at player development. There is the physical element, which is essentially, can the player run? How fast can they run? Can they jump? How high can they jump? How far can they jump? Can they shoulder charge, etc. All right. The technical aspect, can they control pass the ball, head the ball, dribble the ball? Can they defend properly, etc. And then the tactical, can they play with others? Do they understand the decisions that they have to make in a 1v1 situation, defending or attacking? Do they understand the moments of the game, transition, defense to attack, attack to defense, and so on? You know, playing in small groups, playing in bigger groups. And in tactics as well, we talk about individual tactics versus team tactics, group tactics. And that leads us into the other areas, which is the psychosocial aspect, which deals with issues of social interactions within their team, within their communities, within school, with individual teammates. And of course, that affects tactics and team play. The psychological side of it, are they motivated? Are they hardworking? Do they have the stick-to-itiveness, the perseverance? Or do they deal with setbacks? Or do they deal with success? Are they respectful, good sportsmanship? All of those little details. You know, those things are elements of the development. So when at the grassroots level, when we are looking at the individual in front of us, we are endeavoring our very best to impact the player along all of these different aspects. Now, as I said before, development is not linear. And so you'll find that what works for Tom doesn't work for Tony. What works for Sharon doesn't work for Susie. And you'll find that Sharon is faster than Susie with some things, yet slower with some things. And in this environment, it requires a lot of adaptability by the coaches, the capacity to adapt your behaviors, your attitudes, your training plans to different groups of players, to individual players, and meeting them where their needs are greatest. It is very difficult, to be quite frank, because sometimes parents are only concerned about them kids scoring a goal, being the best goalkeeper, etc. And they are not concerned about the same things that you are concerned about in terms of the development aspect. And that is where something André mentioned earlier becomes so important, which is the education. So here at Genesis, and that is something personal and dear to me, we always maintain that education is an important part of how we do things. So we spend a lot of time trying to educate our parents, our spectators, our players, our coaches, you know, so that people understand what we're about, what we're trying to do, the goals that we have, the objectives, and how we are trying to get to these things. You know, we also have to have what we call individual player development plans. And these are formed in conjunction with the player and their parents, where a player agrees with a coach or says to a coach, this is what I want to do. And the coach help the player to formulate it in the best way possible within the structure of the environment that we have available. Now, that can be a little bit complicated, especially when you have large groups. But what is important about that is that the players begin to take ownership for their own development. And then now they take a different attitude, a different approach to their own personal development. So when you talk about homework, assignments, after training, you know, we talk about the four pillars of development earlier. When we are giving assignments to players, they do get these assignments according to these players. So you could give a player a task to develop some psychological element or social element, or it could be a psychosocial element tied into a physical or technical element. So for example, when you train players to do endurance running, just for argument's sake, that also builds perseverance. You know, it also builds the willpower to finish things that you have started. You know, so we have to see the whole thing as a package and try to communicate that to the players as early as possible at the level that they will understand, of course, as André mentioned before, because we have to be very cognizant of that at all times, and try our very best in every situation to ensure that we are meeting the players there. Sometimes here at Genesis, we struggle a lot because we have mixed groups almost all the times. So you will have a group that has similar age players, but their development levels are different. You'll have a group that have different ages. So you might have 8, 10, 12, 13 years old, and you have to put them together because of the number of coaches you have available, or just the number of kids that turn out, excuse me. And so that also requires a different level of adaptation from the coach to make sure that, first of all, the players are safe, second, that they are having fun, and thirdly, that they leave the training session improving in one aspect at the very minimum of the pillars of development. Having said all of that, I want to speak a little to training in terms of player development and training. Some keywords that I just throw out there for thought or for provoking some thought and further conversations. When we think about training players at the grassroots level and even at the professional level, I would dare say, it is the quality of the training session is important. You know, is the session properly organized? Are we asking the players to execute at a standard that is demanding enough for their particular level? Are they being challenged sufficiently to solve problems that the game may throw at them? The frequency of training is another word that I want to throw here. You know, when we started Genesis 10 years ago in 2016, we trained only on Saturdays. And within the first year, we recognized that it was not enough. You know, we had to do more. Where we started Genesis at Manchester High School, it was not plausible to train during the week because the school was just not available. We have subsequently moved to a different place, and we are now training Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. I know some of the other academies, based on where they are located and the environment within which they operate, they train even more often than we do. We would ideally like to do at least 4 days per week, you know, for frequency. The intensity of the training sessions, another thing we want to look at. Different players require different levels of intensity. All right. The more developed the players are, the more you can challenge them, the more you can demand of them. And when we say the more developed they are, it's along all the 4 pillars that we mentioned already. Again, because we don't want to think of developed as just being able to play football, control, pass, dribble, right? Consistency of training is another matter. In our environment here in Genesis, we have some kids who are very consistent, and you can tell when you see us playing tournaments, you can tell that that's a player who is consistent in his training. Then you have other players who are very inconsistent, and it does affect their development. But again, because we are operating at the grassroots level, we don't turn players away ever. You know, we always find a way to facilitate, encourage, and work with them the best way to take them to the levels that they can get to in the best way possible. All right. And then the last thing I'd like to say here on player development is games. When I coached the Jamaica under-17 team, I remember when we played the United States of America and we were doing our research on their team, we found that the US players at the time at the very minimum level, I'm working off memory, so I might be a little bit off in terms of the numbers, but at the very minimum level, most of those players had about 20 to 30 international games. When you count all of their games cumulatively, you're talking about 100 and odd plus competitive games for most of them. When we compare that to our players, there was not one player in our team in 2015 that had more than 6 international games going into that tournament. Not one. All right. And then when you look at the number of games that they played prior to the tournament, none of them got to 100, what we would call top level competitive games. Now, I interact with coaches all over the world and friends all over the world, schoolmates, etc. And there's one particular brethren of mine I went to high school with. His son plays in the Wolverhampton Academy under 9. And every so often we have chats and we discuss and he shares stuff with me. At under 9, those kids are playing 36 games per year. 36 competitive games per year. That's another level of development. I went to Costa Rica and saw under 8 football being played live on television. Saturday morning, all the teams came to one venue, set up with all sorts of banners and marketing stuff, you know, the advertising stuff for the different businesses, live TV broadcasts, under 8 football. And so we want to ensure as far as possible that we can provide enough games for our kids. Whatever that number is yet to be decided, and we hope that in short order we will get some directions on that. You know, while we continue at the grassroots level in the academy environments to try and fix things ourselves. But I want to leave you with where this is concerned. A lot of the research done by FIFA through their technical committees or the technical development agencies, they talk about the 20-60-20 ratio, which essentially is a ratio that says player development works best when players play 20% of the time against teams that are weaker than them, 60% of the times against teams that are at or near the same level as themselves, and then 20% of the time against teams that are superior in quality to them. I think that is something that we have to be mindful of, especially as we look to transition players from grassroots football to elite football, and then from elite to professional football. And the last thing here where games are concerned is environments. You know, it's a huge difference when Genesis plays tournaments in Manchester versus going to Kingston to play a tournament, going to Trinidad to play a tournament, going to the United States to play a tournament, going to St. Ann, Montego Bay, wherever we go. And so one of our key things is that essential to developing our players, not just in terms of being footballers, but as being proper, well-rounded individuals, is to expose them to different environments, you know, where they play against teams and opponents in different environments on different types of pitches, at different levels of their own development, etc., etc. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I would have contributed in a manner that would have stimulated the conversation some more and added value to the purpose of this summit or symposium. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edwards. Very insightful information presented. Question: do you think that it is actually a bit more tedious when you started, given the fact that you started at Manchester High School, when compared to even an era such as Kingston and everything, where access to a lot more resources are really?
Listen, before I started Genesis, I knew what I was doing. I knew what I was getting into. And 10 years later, the struggle is still the same in many regards. But I was born and raised in Port Antonio, Portland. And as a country boy, you really and truly don't get a lot of opportunities, you know, in nothing at all. For the most part, corporate Jamaica, institutional Jamaica, treats Jamaica as Kingston and St. Andrew. So when you're outside of those spaces, you have to fight twice, 3, 4, 5 times as hard. Mr. Wellington will tell you when I was at States how much we had to put into and how much he continues to put into ensuring that States is successful and competitive. So my mission, my purpose was not defined by resources, but rather by the intention to provide opportunities for kids in this environment that they would not otherwise have gotten. So when we started Genesis on the 9th of January 2016, from Clarendon to St. Elizabeth, there was no other organization doing what we were doing, what we started to do. Today, there are over a dozen other such organizations. Right? There are others that would have started and fell down, and we are grateful and we are happy that the grassroots environment in central Jamaica is growing, and that the struggle is being won little by little, little by little. You know, it's a process. At Genesis, we are very happy that we have facilitated boys and girls getting into the national team setup. Some probably would not otherwise have gotten that opportunity. We've had players who have gone away on scholarships locally and internationally. I mentioned before, we have had players coming through Genesis who are now trained physiotherapists, referees. Those things we believe would not have necessarily happened in the absence of a Genesis. Right? We don't know for sure, but what we can say with absolute certainty is that we were a part of that process. We contributed significantly to that, and we will continue to do that as long as we have life in this body, and the others who support us will continue to support us.
Thank you very much once more. Again, really and truly enjoyed the information that you presented, and I'm hoping that it will be very much beneficial to those of whom are on this platform. So thank you very much once more, Mr. Edwards. So we're at now to the testimonial aspect of our program, and we're very much fortunate to have two Omars, one Omar Lawrence and one Omar Cummings, who will be speaking. Will be speaking on their experience as basically growing up a part of Jamaica's football system. We'll be starting off with Omar Cummings.
Yeah. Hello, good evening. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure, honestly, to be on this panel. And yeah, it's always a good to just get back and thank you for the presenters that presented before me. Educating myself, honestly, on all the things that are happening in Jamaica right now. I haven't lived in Jamaica for over 20 odd years now. Yes, I visit a lot, but living and visiting are two different things. So I thank the presenters and I thank you guys for putting this together. All right, so where do I start? I grew up playing football. I grew up born and raised in Old Harbour, or Ballaz Crescent, rather, near to Old Harbour, about 3 miles outside of Old Harbour, St. Catherine. Played all my life, played with my brothers, my sisters, my cousins, and growing up in Jamaica at that time, the first team that I ever played on was actually just our community team, playing up the road versus down the road. And then from there, we started making our community team that we played other communities, like play Freetown, play Wallaba Bay, play Church Pen, you know, those places. And it was fantastic, man, just growing up and playing in those environments. And you know, you put a little bet on it, you know, bag juice or something like that. You know, you have to play for something, you know, win or get it all. So that's where the competition started. But having two older brothers, you know, my cousins and all that play football, you know, those were my heroes. Those were the people that I look up to, and those are the shoes that I had to fill. One of the great things I remember about playing in Jamaica is there were always two balls at the field. There was a ball for the younger guys, and we started earlier, maybe an hour before the older men came to play. And then there was a ball for the older guys. And as you graduate into that older system, where they're like, yeah, they come, they watch you, they think, all right, yeah, man, yeah, y'all come on my team. So you either play shirts or you play skins. And once you make that decision, it's like a lifetime decision there. And that's when, you know, things get really serious, because when the older guys draft you into their team, and the first thing first, you go in the goal, and it's their job to protect you, right? And beautiful thing. I love that tradition even today, which is going away, you know. But their job is to protect you. And the only way you could go on the field is if an older man feel tired or something like that. He's like, all right, kid, go get a run, you know. And your job, they plaster the ball, you're a wall, you know. You plaster it straight back to them. Now, maybe if you feel adventurous, then somebody come to you and you were able to do a move or make a good pass or something like that. They're like, all right, you got some skill, you know. And maybe they'll start giving you the ball a little bit more, and then you can make your way up the field. You know, go into midfield, get wide, get striker, become a striker, and start scoring some goals. But before then, you stay in the goal. And if you make a mistake, you go back in the goal, you know, and your journey starts again. Now, from there, you know, you start playing for St. Catherine, under 12, under 14 with St. Catherine. High school, I went to Old Harbour High, played there. And then from there on to Jonathan Grant, where we won the trophy there, championship, Olivia Shield at the time, you know, missed out on the Manning Cup. But from there I went and played for Duaney Park, and from Duaney Park to Rivoli. And from Rivoli, got a scholarship to the University of Cincinnati, where, you know, that actually not the University of Cincinnati. I went to the junior college first, Cincinnati State, and that journey was an interesting one because the coach has never seen me before. He never saw me play at all before. And just through Bradley Stewart that did summer camps here in the States, and just Mike, the coach at the time, having to know Bradley and trust Bradley's experience with players, and know that if Bradley say a kid can play, a kid can play, you know. And so Bradley came home and like, hey, kid, you want to go to college? I'm like, what are you talking about? Of course I want to go to college, you know. And he knew that was a dream of mine, you know. So you know, links were made, connections were made, and before I knew it, I was on a flight, you know, heading to Cincinnati, Ohio, of all places, to play football, and to go to school. And yeah, that was the learning curve was difficult. I wouldn't say that difficult at times, you know. It just, football in Cincinnati State was different, you know, to how I was doing it. At the time, I think I was playing at a higher level than what Cincinnati State offered, and so you have to take a step back and you have to try and mix in and try your hardest to like blend within the culture of the States, of the team, you know. And along those lines, you have to do the academics, you know, which, yes, something that we're used to, but even then, the biggest obstacle then, even just working with computers, you know. I didn't got access to computers when I was in Jamaica as much, you know. You get like a couple hours here and there, and so to come in and like all your assignments have to be through computers, you know, was something different. And to learn how to type, you know, at that time, you know, it took hours, man. Oh my God, so many hours to complete like one paper. You know, but eventually you get the hang of it. And it's the psychological part of it, of being away from family. I think it's tough. You know, it was just myself. I didn't really know anyone around me, and to be inside that environment mentally, I wouldn't say take a toll, but you have to know what your goals are. I definitely, you know, set my goals and know that I am not failing. You know, I am not failing. I can't fail because too many people are depending on me, and too many people want to be in my shoes. You know, and I'm the one that got the opportunity, and so I'm going to make the best of it. So the first year, or I would say the first like 6 months, 7 months, were a little bit of a struggle, but eventually, you know, you learn to get over that. You learn to live in the environment that you're in. You know, you get the support that you can from family. You know, back then I didn't even have a phone. You know, I couldn't even afford a phone. But you know, eventually, you know, overcome that. And by the second year, it was great. It was you know, I started thriving in that environment. You know, met people, got to know people, started making friends, and by the next year, I was from All-American and first team this and first team that. And before I know it, I was in University of Cincinnati, where Hilton Days was also the coach for the Jamaican, and had a few Jamaicans there. So that became a place that was a little bit more familiar, and the States were getting a bit more familiar by that time, and had some good relationships there. And but the mentality there in American football was even different. Like the boys at the time were talking about their ranking, we're going to a new conference, and they look at the conference and say, yeah, I think fourth is the best. We should aim for fourth. And I'm looking around the locker room like, what the hell are these guys talking about, man? And not, being someone a little bit more reserved, a little bit more shy, was like, yo, where the hell did I come? Where people are talking about fourth is what's good enough, And that kind of shocked me, man. Like, fourth, what the hell are these guys talking about? And luckily, I didn't want to really say anything, but luckily, another Jamaican, Ewan Blair, was like, yo, what the hell are we talking about fourth? Why not first? Why not fourth? First is like the thing we should aim for. And if we fall to second or third, then that's a level that we accept, But yeah, we ended up coming actually second that year, and by the next year we were winning the championship, From there we got made All-American that year. From there I was drafted to the Colorado Rapids and picked up, again, not a difficulty as far as getting my first injury and doing my first surgery and not knowing what lies ahead, and almost seeing your dreams disappear in front of you. When I went into preseason, I couldn't practice with the team. I was injured, did a surgery at the end of my senior year, a knee surgery. And when I got into preseason that year, I felt like lost. I felt because the guys were practicing like 3-4 weeks before I got in. And at first, when I got drafted, I thought, you know what, you made it. You made it. You made it. You're a professional, but only to find out that's an extended trial. Getting drafted means absolutely nothing other than you get an extended trial for them to look at you, And I felt like, yo, there's no way I'm going to make this team like this. And I was playing in Denver that has altitude, already. And I just felt like I was blowing out of my ears, man. Blowing out of my ears, for the first couple of days training with those guys. And but yeah, eventually, as I said, that mentality of I can't fail was one that stuck with me. And I'm like, I'm not failing, man. I'm gonna make this team. Whatever it takes to make this team, I'm gonna make it. So I had to do double time. I was already behind. I had to do double time. I had to train on my own. I had to push myself. I had to push and fight and get a little bit more grit than I normally wouldn't or needed to. And play in a certain way that says, yo, I have to be here. And by the end of preseason, I was one of the last guys that was picked to be on the team. And the coach was basically threatening me because he was like, yo, you are going to take up an international spot, because back then only 18 players were allowed to be on the senior squad. And then the rest were considered reserves. And so if he picked me, I would have to be in an international. I would have to occupy an international spot. And he was like, yo, I'm taking a big risk here. So if you mess up, that's your ass. I got no leeway, But yeah, by midway through the year, by the end of the year, end up picking up Rookie of the Year, scoring some goals and getting a good niche of what MLS is required, what the players around me require. And I always feel like it's about, your environment. You have to adapt to your environment, and so yeah, each environment, you have to look at it and ask yourself what is required of you, what the coaches want from you, what they're looking for you, what your teammates want from you, and try to adapt to that environment. You can't be the same way all the time, And I feel like that's where a lot of players fail, where they don't adapt to the environment that they get into. Whether people love a lot of Jamaican players, but they'll tell you like if you get into the cold environment or a certain environment, like they just shut down. We shut down sometimes, and like that mentality of like I'm gonna make this is an environment I have to change to. Then I think we can make it if we can change to that environment. And so again, I backtrack a little bit there, but got Rookie of the Year. By the next year, I wasn't starting as much, but by the next year, I was like 50% starting, 50% coming off the bench, but I played almost all the games that year. And by the year after that, I was a full-out starter for Colorado. And by year 4, we won the championship. So in 4 short years, it was pretty fast how things could happen. Played there for 6 years, six years that I really enjoyed. And then moved on to Houston, which wasn't as successful, but injuries played a part in that. Ended up playing for the national team, which again, one of the great honors of my life, playing for the national team always, to wear the colors. And from there, played 3 years in Houston, played with the national team, and ended up in San Antonio for a year, and finished my career with FC Cincinnati in the USL as they were starting out. And that was 2 years that was amazing for me, just because of how fresh everything was, and coming back to Cincinnati to represent Cincinnati. And I currently still now work with Cincinnati in the community relations space, and as a club ambassador also, which is still surreal for me that a little skinny kid from Jamaica could make that jump and do all that I've done and come back and represent the city, and for them to look at me and say, hey, we want you to be an ambassador for Cincinnati. And it's been an honor so far, serving as an ambassador for Cincinnati and for Jamaica.
Thank you very much, Omar. Really and truly enjoyed all that you said just now. Just one question from me. You said that when leaving Jamaica was one of the hardest things for you, but what really kept you motivated throughout that time? Like what was the main thing that you say, like this is very much rough for me, but like it will not last forever?
Again, I always thought of it as this is opportunity that I got. I'm the one who got this opportunity. I have 2 brothers, as I said. I have cousins, I have friends, and seeing that my brothers at the time, the opportunity wasn't provided for them. One got hurt, one had to go to work, but again, for all the reasons that, Mr. Wellington and André and all these guys and Andrew talked about, Jamaica doesn't provide that professional environment where you can play in Jamaica and feed your family, and I saw where my brother had to go to work because he wasn't earning enough money. He was playing for Hazard at the time, and Hazard couldn't provide enough money, to provide a family. So he went to work, and, that's great for him. Wonderful, And my other brother was also playing for Hazard, got hurt. And after about, 4 months or 6 months to helping him when he got hurt with his back, then no help whatsoever. It's like, okay, you're not getting better after 6 months, then, sorry, can't help you. So I actually quit. I should actually have told this part of my story. I actually quit football for almost a year, and my brother that got hurt is the one that got me back in, because I was at that point where at about 16, I didn't get picked for a team that I wanted to get picked for. And I basically said, you know what? If I didn't get picked at 16, I'm going to either choose football, which if I don't get picked at 16, all right, doesn't look like I'm going to be in the elite category, so I better focus on my education. So that's what I started doing at the age of 16. And about 10 months or so, my uncle, that's one of the local coach for the local team in my community, was like, hey, man, we could use help. We're struggling. We could use help. So I'd love for you to come and play. And I played one game, one game. And my brother that was hurt, Chappie, Christopher, he heard that I played, didn't even see me play, heard that I played. Because if he saw me play, probably would have pulled me off the field. but he heard that I played and he came to me and I said, listen, kid, listen, if you don't love the sport anymore, I understand it, you know, but if you love the sport and you're going to play the sport, you're not going to play at this level. You're not going to play at this level. So that's how he got me to do any part and grab this Stewart. And again, things just moved so fast after that, man. Like within a year and a half, you know, I was getting a scholarship to go overseas. And for me, that was my new lifeline. That was my opportunity. And so many, my two brothers didn't get that opportunity. I got the opportunity. You know, so many of my friends that played didn't get that opportunity. My family members didn't get that opportunity. And for me, I was representing not only myself, my family, my community, my country, but everyone else that didn't get that opportunity. I was representing everyone that did not get that opportunity. And, you know, I couldn't live with myself or go back, you know, and say I failed. Like it just wasn't an option. It was just not an option that I was willing to accept. You know, I couldn't fail. Like I had to, you know, so I gave it everything. I gave it everything I got, you know, just because I knew so many people were looking at me, not even to say, you know, like I carry them with me, you know, because they can say they can do that. You know, when I do it, you know, every kid from my community can say I can do it. You know, every kid that went to the school that I went to can say I can do that also. You know, so that's something I bring with me always.
All right, just want to thank you very much, Omar. Really and truly enjoyed the insights in your journey. It was quite an interesting one, and I do believe that you're one of those persons who were just, I'd say, in the right place at the right time, and you know, opportunities met talent, and you know, we have seen how things have transitioned for you. Really and truly thank you for your testimony, and hoping that the youngsters that have tuned in here can take your journey as inspiration, because at times, you know, you're young. Sometimes you may not be playing as well as you want to, and then think obstacles coming the way, you might just decide that, hey, I want to give up and I don't want to do this more. Your story, I wouldn't say give up, you pause a little bit and, you know, you get back yourself into the game, and, you know, you're done extremely well since that time. So really and truly appreciate your efforts. So now we're going to be turning over to Omar Lawrence. Lawrence,
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Yeah, man, you're welcome.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, Mr. Lawrence, I hear you.
All right, thank you for having me. This is a great panel, by the way. It's a lot of good information, a lot of good individuals, a lot of good names that have been in the industry for quite some time and that have a lot of experience. For myself, grew up in the inner city of Jamaica, off Mountain View, played for the local team there, as I believe most of us start out. Then I transitioned to Harbor View. Actually, no, I started at Mountain View United first. So played for the local team, and then the local semi-professional team played for the youth teams there. And then I moved to Harbor View, where I finished out playing for the youth teams, got called up to the youth national teams there all throughout, under 15, 17, got injured for under 20 a few days before we were actually supposed to go to camp. So that was a bummer. But it was good. It was a good youth career for me, a good youth development for me. It was a lot of injuries though, and a lot of lack of knowledge about injuries, how to get over injuries, a lot of the stuff that Dr. Hunter spoke about really connected, because there definitely is a lack of knowledge when it comes to that piece for young players in Jamaica. We have the skill, we've got the talent, but those few pieces that actually separate our talent from professionals, I think that's a big gap there in our community. I am from playing, I believe, playing for the national teams. I got an opportunity to go overseas to represent at the Division I level. I got a scholarship to go to a school in Indiana, when the coach told me about the university, I've never heard the name of the university before. I actually didn't even know. The first time he said the name, I did not know what he said. That's how bad it was. But I knew he said that I'm offering you a full ride to come play Division One. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to worry about anything. Would you like to come visit? I said, Coach, I'm not gonna. I don't have the funds to come visit, but I'll come play. It was. I was very happy about the opportunity. The transition wasn't necessarily easy. There are some things you have to get taken care of here before you get there, before they start taking care of you. And that part of it was a little difficult, getting some things taken care of. It was a lot of running around, the medicals that you have to do, covering your flight to get there, then leaving your family, like Cummins talked about. That's, I think, for a lot of us, that's the difficult part as well. Just leaving your family. It's a good thing, but that part eats at you. Leaving your family and going overseas, having your why in front of you, I think, is a great thing that helps you to combat that. Going to college was good. The first year was good. It was a transition. I remember it was August. It was summer. It was Indiana, though. It was the Midwest. So the Midwest is very cold. And it was the morning. It was 6 a.m., the first practice, August 13th, 2023. And I started talking. And just like the movies, I see the mist coming from my mouth. And I'm like, man, it's cold. And they looked at me surprised and said, you haven't experienced nothing yet, bro. You haven't experienced nothing yet. And they were telling the truth. They were telling the absolute truth. That first summer, that first summer was rough. My roommate, which was actually another Jamaican, broke the window, and we had to spend, I don't remember how long, but it was probably more than a week. We had to put up some garbage bag and tape it up to keep the cold from coming out. We didn't even have blankets, the proper blankets or the proper coats or the proper shoes. Man, we were not prepared for that weather at all, but we were there. We were happy to be there, and we weren't going to let none of that stop us. We were there to do what we needed to do for our families, for ourselves, and just to play the sport that we love. We saw it as a privilege. We were happy to be there, and it was a smile through all of that. Throughout all the challenges that we experienced, there was still a smile on our face, and it was. I think it was a benefit. I was fortunate to have other Jamaicans there with me. I had Nico Campbell and Adrian Graham there with me at the same year, so I think that was definitely fortunate for me. The first year was good. One thing I do remember, and I think will never leave my mind, and I use it even in my profession, the coach, one of the practices, I was on the A team. What I saw as the A team when we went in. And he moved me from the A team to the B team. And in my head, I'm like, what is coach doing? So I had to pick it up. I don't know what he was trying, but I had to change my mindset and be like, all right, coach. Before the session ended, he had to switch me back. Because in my head, I'm like, no, coach, I'm here to play. And I know I'm the best option that you have to play this position. So I had to kick in another gear and show him like what I had. Some of the difficulties that I think I experienced, and maybe a lot of guys experience, the fitness level between playing in Jamaica and playing in the US is completely different. Their level of fitness, their idea of fitness is completely different because they will run all day. And I had to get used to that. It took me a while, I admit. It was probably till my last year to where I really put it in and got my physical up to par with where they were, because they put more emphasis on that. They put more emphasis on the physical side of it, the aerobic side of it, the running and all that, and less so on the technical side of it. We're more technical savvy than them. They're more physical. So I had to work at that and try to match that up. It was a learning curve, but we eventually got there. Injuries. Man, before going to college, I had a very serious injury, a very serious knee injury. I tore my patella tendonitis, and there was a point where I did not know if I was going to get a scholarship. That was my dream at that point. And with that injury happening, I was very discouraged. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. It was the dream. It was the goal. I had to achieve it. Harborview helped, and they got me a surgery because I got the injury while playing for them. So I was very thankful for that. I'm very happy I got it. And I got help with recovery through physiotherapy there. It wasn't fully healed. There were still issues as with any injury, but I mean, I was in Jamaica at that time. The recovery, I feel, only goes so far. Someone's only going to sponsor your recovery for so far. They're not going to continue for years and years and years. So I had to do personal recovery. Leading up to leaving, my knee would still swell up at some times, but I was still working, still trying to strengthen it. And I was worried. I was worried that I would go there and I would be playing on that turf and my knee would blow out again. Thankfully, I think either I did enough work or it was by the grace of God, my knee didn't give me much issues at all. That knee didn't give me issues. I had other injuries, but thankfully that knee didn't give me issues. Being at college, they have the facilities, much better facilities than Jamaica. And I was very happy for that because I was able to get a lot of care, but it requires a lot. You're getting a lot of care, but you're required to play. You're required to, they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on you per year. They need back that investment. If we're going to pay this much into you, we need you to show us that, hey, it was worth it to bring you here and pay all this money for full scholarship. And not only that, you're telling us if we need to go back to Jamaica and get more players for our team. And I think myself, Nico Campbell, and Adrian Graham, we really showed out and really showed up because each year they went back and they got either one or two more players until during COVID, the team was disbanded. At one point, the starting team had about 8 Jamaicans on the team. We did pretty well. I did pretty well. We were ranked pretty high. Ranking is very important in the US when it comes to playing Division I. We played against a lot of ranked teams like Indiana University and those teams. They didn't like playing us because when we beat them, it would hurt their rankings. I got quite a few accommodations for the league that we were in. Definitely for freshman year, all freshman team. Each year I got all freshmen on the All-American team for the division, which was very good. Got a few commendations for weekly player of the year, a whole lot of commendations, did really well. I was the captain of the team for the last 2 years, which was pretty good coming in as a junior and as a senior, being the captain of the team. That was really good. The coach really had a lot of trust in me. I loved my college time. It was tough. I worked a lot of hours to make money because that was the only way I would make money. I worked multiple jobs on campus. A lot of early mornings to go to practice. A lot of doing homework on the bus. A lot of trying to figure out time for yourself. It was a lot. It was a lot. I think my time right now is more managed than it was back then because it was just so many things stacked up on top of each other that you had to do. But it was fun. It was a dream that I focused on and I achieved it. I think one fault of mine was not thinking about what after college and having a goal for that, having a why for that. The goal was always pro, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. I think that's one of the things I could have done better is figure out, all right, what's the if this is what I want, what's the avenue to get there and how can I do it? It's not easy. I think now we have a lot of guys in the MLS and there's a path to know who to speak with, I think. But back then, it wasn't very clear. It wasn't very easy to get the connections. I think that's one thing I probably should have focused on a little bit more. But even though I didn't go the professional route to go play in the MLS or elsewhere, getting that education, finishing school, going even further to get my MBA right now, everything that I did before set me up for where I am right now with a beautiful life, a beautiful family, and being able to give back right now, coaching as well. I think I'm in a really good spot and I'm happy to be where I am right now.
Thank you very much, Omar, for that very much inspiring journey of yours. So, talking here about being a student athlete, as you while being a student athlete, at times did it feel did you reach a crossroads where you actually wanted to choose between either school or sport?
Either school or sport, meaning professional, leaving school and going to play professional?
Yeah.
No. For me personally, no. In my head, finishing was very important. It was too big of a risk. I had done too much to get to where I was at that point to risk it and say, all right, I'm going to leave school. It wasn't necessary as well because, there's the combine after you leave there. I don't even think you could have left early. I'm not sure if you could have left early back then and go to the combine or not. At least it wasn't a popular trend of people doing it. You had to be pulled out of the crowd to do that to where, it's not a risk. You're getting drafted. For me, that wasn't the picture. So no, for me, I wanted to finish so that I could have that degree. It's something that you could fall back on. You can decide at that point if you want to, which direction you want to go when you meet the fork in the road.
Yeah, thank you. Final question before we wrap up. What advice would you give to Jamaican youngsters who are in a similar position, doing well academically and as well as in sport and want to follow a similar path as yours?
Yeah, good point on the academic. That part right there is really important. In anything that we do, figure out your why, figure out your goal and where you want to get to. And everything that you do should be leading you in that direction. Man, I missed a lot of parties. I missed a lot of going out with friends. I missed a lot of things because I knew where I wanted to be. I knew I wanted to get the scholarship. I knew I had to get good grades. I knew I had to keep playing at the highest level where I was. I knew I had to keep preparing myself to get to where I needed to be. So find, if it's your passion, if it's where you want to go, every single step that you make should be inching you in that direction, should be leading you in that direction with whatever you do, not just for this, whatever you do.
I just want to say again, thank you very much, Omar Lawrence, for the testimony. And I do hope that the youngsters on this platform have learned a lot and understand that even though they're doing well as youngsters now within the sport, it is not necessarily an easy road. A lot of obstacles will come no matter how passionate you are. There will be times when you probably just want to probably call it quits, but at the same time, you don't necessarily have an option but even pause and keep going. And for that, we're grateful. So again, we're about to wrap up now. Just want to thank all of our panelists who have graced us with their presence this evening, from Mr. Keith Wellington to Dr. Ramon Hunter, André Virtue, André Edwards. We're really and truly appreciative of all the information presented, and we hope that all that has been presented will be beneficial to those of whom who have tuned in. I'll now turn over to Carlington Monroe to give the vote of thanks. Then you wrap up.
All right, good evening, everyone. As we blow the final whistle from schoolboy football to the professional game seminar, it is my privilege and honor to present this vote of thanks. Firstly, I give thanks to God. He was our ultimate coach today, helping us score goals, giving us technical advice, and making this game plan a success. Let's now discuss the starting 11 that made this possible. To Mr. Keith Wellington, Dr. Ramon Hunter, Mr. André Virtue, Mr. Andrew Edwards, Coach Davion Ferguson, Mrs. Tanya Lee Perkins, and the legendary Mr. Omar Cummings and Mr. Omar Lawrence. You were not only speakers, but you were also our captains. Not only did you talk about the game, but you also took us on a journey from schoolboys to professional players. You guys also explained the tactics of life and taught us how to transition from the schoolyard to the stadiums. Thanks for your insights and your time. Just like how championship teams need the right fuel to perform at their best, we extend our sincere gratitude to our sponsors, Chazzy Ramson and True Shake, for their generous support. Your investment made this seminar possible, and we are truly grateful. Special thanks to our referee, Mr. Kimmel Ford, for ensuring that the game was kept clean and the energy was high. To Mr. Fabian Stewart for his pre-match talk, and to Josiah Barkley, who looked after our online fans in the stands. So the organizing committee, you're the unsung heroes, the kit managers, the medical team, and the groundkeepers who prepared the pitch. If not you, there would be no game. However, a team cannot do without its supporters. For all those tuning in online, our student athletes, coaches, managers, and supporters, thank you for taking the time out to come into this huddle with us this evening. The roar of the crowd got this conversation moving because of your questions and comments. So today, as we leave this arena, this is the message. Talent win games, teamwork and intelligence win championships. With the playbook you received today, use it not just for your sport, but for your education and your life. As a member of the organizing committee, thank you all for making this a winning day.
Thank you very much, and it was a pleasure hosting you all this evening as we dive into the sport that we love immediately after the FIFA World Cup. Again, thanks to everyone you tuned in, from our sponsors to our presenters to the overall target audience and the faculty, for making this event come to fruition. Again, once more, I'm your host, Kemal E. Ford. Thank you all for tuning in.